That is the number on the first line of the report. Not a summary, not a preface. The number sits there, bare and blunt, like a debt that nobody intends to pay. I read it twice, not because I misunderstood it the first time, because the second reading is the one where it stops being a number and starts being weight. Ensign Provar slides the data tablet across the briefing table toward me. His hands, four-fingered, jointed backward at the wrist the way the Wrath hands are, tremble at the edges. He has been awake for 31 hours. I know this because I have been awake for 32, and I watched him come on shift an hour after me with that hollow look behind his secondary eyes that his species gets when they have stopped processing fear and started absorbing it instead. "Commander Dross," he says, "the updated advance projection." I take the tablet. I do not look at him yet. The report is thorough. Whoever drafted it at Alliance Command has very clean formatting. Vorith Station gone. The Kareth Belt colonies gone. Myrth Prime Salyun the Ratha agricultural rings at Pel 7 all gone. Not destroyed in any dramatic sense. Just gone the way a tide takes sand. The hegemony arrived. The hegemony catalogued. The hegemony moved on. They always move on. That is the part that sits wrong in my chest. Not the violence of it, though there is violence. Do not let anyone tell you there is not, but the indifference. 14 worlds and not one of them rated a pause. Not one of them made the hegemony slow down and reconsider the route. I set the tablet on the table. "What is our current crew count?" I ask. 214, Commander, including the 8 Therathi technical liaisons. "And the rail batteries?" 3 operational. Battery 2 is running at 60% charge capacity. Engineering says it holds, but Chief Suhan. "What does Suhan say?" Provar hesitates. "She says it holds if we don't ask it to do anything stupid." "Good, write that in the operational log exactly as she said it." He blinks his secondary eyes. This is the Therathi equivalent of a raised eyebrow. I push back from the table and walk to the viewport. The Unbroken hangs in open space between a dead debris field and the trajectory. The hegemony has been running for the past 4 months. She is not pretty, the Unbroken. She is 42 years old, built in the Cascade orbital yards when human shipbuilding was still more weld than precision, and she carries those years in her hull the way a working dock carries salt deep in the grain of it, not going anywhere. Her shielding system was patched last cycle by a bosun named Garrett who has the specific genius of people who grew up fixing things nobody else thought were worth fixing. The forward sensor array picks up a ghost echo on the port side every 18 minutes for reasons nobody has fully diagnosed. We have started calling it Wallace. We do not know why. I keep a count. I have kept it since Vorith Station, in a small physical notebook that I carry in the left breast pocket of my uniform jacket. Nobody at Alliance Command knows about the notebook. It is not an official document. It is a personal ledger, planet names on the left side, dates on the right. A running list of what has been taken that cannot be put back. 14 entries. On the right-hand page, I have been writing names. Crew members I knew at Vorith. A cargo pilot from Myrth Prime who owed me 60 credits from a card game and will never get the chance to pay them back. A woman named Elaine who ran a small repair shop at the Kareth Belt and always gave military ships a discount because, she said, nobody else was going to do it. I never explained the notebook to anyone. I do not intend to. Behind me, Provar speaks carefully. "Commander, the Therathi Council has asked me to relay a formal question." "Go ahead." "They want to know, and I am quoting directly, whether humanity is afraid." I watch the stars through the viewport for a moment. They do not offer anything useful. "Tell them," I say, "that we keep terrible records." Provar is quiet for 3 seconds. I can hear him processing it. I do not elaborate. The long-range sensor array chirps once, then again. Then it holds a continuous tone that everyone on this ship has been trained to recognize since their first week aboard. Pravar checks his console. His hands go very still. Commander, he says, long-range contact, multiple signatures, hegemony configuration. I do not turn from the viewport immediately. I give myself 4 seconds. I look at the stars, and I think about Elaine and her repair shop, and the 60 credits, and the notebook in my pocket with 14 entries on the left side. Then I turn. How many? 43 capital signatures, 18 support vessels, moving at standard advanced speed. He pauses. They are not rushing. They never rush. Battle stations, I say, and get me Suhan on comms. The alarm sounds through the unbroken, not the screaming kind, the low rolling kind, the one that means this is real and everyone has a job to do and the time for opinions about that is finished. Boots hit the deck plates in the corridor outside. Someone shouts a name, Garrett's, I think. The ship begins to feel different, the way a body feels different when it goes from resting to ready. A kind of gathering, a pulling in. The comms crackle. Suhan, I say, they're here. Her voice comes back even, unhurried, with the first 4 notes of some old Pacific Coast song hummed under her breath before she speaks. She always does that. I stopped noticing it years ago, which means I would notice immediately if it ever stopped. I know, she says. Wallace pinged twice. He always knows before the sensors do. Battery 2. Hold, she says, if we're not stupid. Define stupid for me today. Oh, anything heroic, she says, and she does not sound like she is joking. I walk to the command console. The hegemony fleet resolves on the long-range display, 61 signatures, moving in the precise formation they have used in every engagement of this campaign. Not because it is the only formation that works, because it has never needed to be anything else. 14 worlds did not make them change formation once. I open my notebook to the left-hand page. I look at the last entry. I look at it for a long time. Then I close it, put it back in my pocket, and sit in the command chair. Pravar, I say, mark our position in the log. Yes, Commander, any notation. I think about it. Right holding. He writes it. On the long-range display, the hegemony fleet continues its approach at standard advanced speed, the way a tide comes in, not rushing, not hesitating, simply arriving, the way things arrive when they have never had reason to do anything else. The unbroken settles beneath me. Old hull plates, old welds, old bones. I put both hands flat on the console. We hold. The debris field had a name once. In the Alliance Shipping Registry, it is listed as Sector 7KL Remnant, which is the kind of name that gets assigned by people who never actually go there and never have to look at what a name like that is covering over. What it is covering over is the patience of moons. Or what is left of her. She was a Therathi colony transport, one of the long-haul generation ships that the Therathi built before they had faster-than-light capability, when getting somewhere meant committing to the distance in a way that current generations have forgotten how to do. She carried 11,000 people on her last registered voyage. She was 81 years old. Her hull plating was the deep red-brown that the Therathi engineers preferred in the pre-Alliance era, a color they called bloodwood, which did not mean what it sounds like. It was named for a tree on their homeworld that bled sap the same shade when it was cut and healed clean. Now she is a field of fragments, spread across 40,000 kilometers of nothing, and I am flying the unbroken into the middle of her. Navigation, I say, thread us through the densest section. I want hull coverage on our port flank. Lieutenant Howe, my navigator, is 26 years old and has the very specific calmness of someone who grew up near the sea, not scared of what is big and dark and moving, just respectful of it. He plots the course without asking me why. I appreciate that about him. Pravar, however, asks. Commander, he says, with the careful voice he uses when he suspects I am about to do something the Therathi tactical doctrine would classify as irrational. The debris field compromises our own sensor resolution. It compromises theirs more, I say. Our sensors grew up reading noise. We built them on Earth, where the weather is always wrong and the atmosphere lies to you on a weekly basis. Hegemony sensors grew up in clean space. Put them in clutter and they slow down. I pause. Suhan taught me that. Suhan, Pravar says carefully, is an engineer. She is the best kind of engineer, the kind that understands that the ship and the battle are the same problem. He does not argue further. He goes back to his console. The Unbroken moves into the debris field. I have been on this ship for 9 years. I know her the way you know a place you have lived long enough that it stops being a place and starts being a context. The specific hum of her deck plates at low thrust, the way her air recyclers click twice before they settle on cold mornings, the sound that comes from the starboard corridor when Gunnery Sergeant Tave is working late, which is a kind of silence that has organization to it, a silence that is busy. Tave is working now. I can feel it in the ship's quiet. He is 38 years old, Tave. He grew up in a landlocked place, Nebraska, I think, though he has never confirmed it, and he has the specific flatness of people from landlocked places, a flatness that is not emptiness but compaction. Like everything he might have said or felt got pressed down into a smaller space and came out denser. He runs gunnery with the kind of precision that looks like calm until you realize it is not calm at all. It is complete concentration, and there is a difference. He alphabetizes things when he is processing something difficult. I discovered this 3 years ago when I noticed that after the Vorath engagement, every cabinet in the gunnery bay had been reorganized from scratch. I did not ask him about it. He did not explain it. The alphabet goes in order. Everything else will too, eventually. I think that is the theory. Long range, I say. Give me the hegemony formation. The display updates. 61 signatures, still moving at standard advanced speed, still in the same formation they have used for 14 engagements. The formation is elegant in a cold way, layered, overlapping fields of fire, no gap in coverage, no weak angle. It was designed for a universe where the only variable is how long the target takes to stop. It has never needed to adapt. I study it for a long time. Pravar, I say, in all 14 engagements, did the hegemony ever face a capital-class warship? He checks his records. 2 instances. Myrth Prime had a defense cruiser. The Rathai 3rd Fleet made contact at Pell 7. And both engaged at standard range, standard tactical doctrine. He pauses. Standard results. Standard results. I look at the formation on the display. I look at the gap between the hegemony's lead element and their support wings. Not a large gap, not a gap that was designed to be exploited, but a gap that exists because in 61 engagements across 14 worlds, nobody had ever tried to exploit it. Nobody had tried to get close. In the Rathai Tactical Library, which I have read, because there is a great deal of time on long patrols and I read everything, there is a philosophical framework for fleet engagement that translates roughly as the art of the proper distance. The idea is that the correct position in a battle is the position where you maximize your own power while minimizing your exposure. It is a reasonable framework. It has produced excellent results for 300 years of the Rathai military history. The problem with the proper distance, from my perspective, is that it assumes both parties are trying to survive the engagement. I reach over to the internal comms. Tave. A beat, Commander. Rail batteries 1 and 3. I want charge confirmation. Confirmed, both at full. Battery 2. 61%, he says, holding. Good, I pause. How are you? There is a silence that has its own texture. Alphabetical, he says. Then we're fine, I say, and close the channel. How has threaded the Unbroken into the heart of the debris field now? Around us, the fragments of the Patience of Moons drift in every direction, hull plates, structural beams, interior bulkheads that once divided a room where someone slept from a corridor where someone walked to breakfast. The bloodwood color is everywhere, deep and dark, catching the distant light of the system's star in patches and angles. I grew up near the water. I know what wreckage looks like when the tide brings it in. I know that the ocean does not feel anything about what it carries. The hegemony, I think, would understand that instinct entirely. On the display, the fleet's advance continues, and then Pravar makes a sound, not a word, a sound, the kind that comes before a word when the word needs a moment to form. "Commander," he says. "I see it. The hegemony formation has changed. Not dramatically, not the whole fleet. The lead element, 12 capital signatures, has shifted its approach vector by 4 degrees, a small adjustment, an almost invisible adjustment if you were not watching for it. But it is an adjustment. 61 engagements, 14 worlds, and for one battered human warship hiding in a debris field they moved. Pravar is very quiet for a moment. "They've never done that," he says. "No," I say, "they have not." I let that sit in the air of the bridge. I let everyone hear it and understand it and tuck it into whatever internal space they keep the things that matter. Then I say, "How? Take us out of the field. Bring us to bearing 270, angle 40 degrees on the ecliptic, straight toward the lead element." Hal turns in his chair and looks at me. He does not argue. He does not ask if I am certain. He is 26 years old and grew up near the sea, and people who grow up near the sea understand that you do not argue with the person who has decided to meet the wave. "Bearing 270, he says, "angle 40, aye, Commander." The Unbroken moves out of the debris field. Into the open. Toward 61 ships that have never once had to wonder what came next. Behind us, the Patience of Moons drifts in pieces in the dark, bloodwood red and very still. I put my hand in my left breast pocket and feel the edge of the notebook. Not the time yet. But almost. The first shot from the hegemony arrives at 4:12 ship time, and it is, I will tell you honestly, not what I expected. I expected force. I have read the engagement reports from Myerth Prime, from Pel 7, from every world on the left side of my notebook. The reports describe the hegemony's opening volleys as categorical, not targeted, not tactical in any human sense of the word, just thorough. The way you clear a table before you set it for a different meal. This shot is careful. It tracks us for 0.8 seconds before it fires. There is a targeting delay built into that. I can read it in the sensor data, and so can Hal, who says nothing but whose hands go very steady on the navigation controls in the specific way that means he has noticed something, and decided the thing to do about it is to be extremely good at his job. The shot hits the Unbroken on the port forward quadrant. The impact is not gentle. 3 deck plates buckle on level 4. 2 secondary conduits blow their seals. The lights on the bridge drop to backup amber for 6 seconds before the main power reroutes. In the amber light, Pravar looks like something from the old paintings of deep-sea creatures, all secondary eyes and thin hands gripping the edge of his console. He is reading the damage report as it comes in, and his mouth is moving with the numbers, adding them in real time. In the amber light, I look at the hegemony formation on the tactical display. They fired once. One careful targeting shot. And then they waited. "They're reading us," I say. "Commander," Hal says. "They fired to see how we respond. They want to know where we go." I watch the display. The lead element has not advanced. The support wings have not moved. 61 ships sitting still, watching a single damaged human warship to see if it turns around. 14 worlds turned around eventually. Every single one of them, at some point, performed the rational calculation and arrived at the correct answer. I open the channel to engineering, Suhan. The humming is louder now, something in a minor key, the notes pressed closer together the way they get when she is managing multiple problems simultaneously. I hear her cross the engine bay, the sound of her boots on the grating changing pitch as she moves. Level 4 took the worst of it, she says before I can speak. I have Garrett on the conduits. Main power is rerouted and holding. Battery 2 is still at 61%, don't ask me how. And the shielding. A pause. A very specific kind of pause. The kind that has a measurement inside it that the speaker is deciding how to present. Forward shielding is at 70%, she says, which is fine, unless. Unless what? Unless we do something stupid, she says. The minor key humming resumes. Soo-Han, I say, I need you to listen to me for a moment. The humming stops. I am going to close distance, I say. I am going to take us into their engagement cone, and I am going to fire at knife range. There is a silence on the channel that has a specific texture. Not disbelief. Soo-Han has been on this ship long enough that she stopped being surprised by my decision somewhere around year 4. It is more the silence of a person doing a very fast calculation and arriving at a number that they are going to accept because the person asking them to accept it has earned that much. How close, she asks. Close enough that their fire control systems need to readjust their minimum safe range. Another silence, shorter this time. I'll pull power from the secondary drives and push it to the forward shield emitters, she says. It won't hold forever. It does not need to hold forever, I say. It needs to hold long enough. Long enough for what? I think about the formation on the display. I think about 61 ships that have never once had to wonder what was going to happen next. I think about the slight adjustment in the lead element's approach vector, 4 degrees, barely visible, never done before in 14 engagements. Long enough for them to understand what they are looking at, I say. Soo-Han is quiet for one more second. Then the humming resumes, same minor key, but a different song. Something older, something with more weight in it. How, I say, full forward, bearing straight into their center mass. Don't deviate. Straight in, Hal says, I. The unbroken accelerates. On the tactical display, the hegemony formation holds perfectly still for 4.3 seconds. This is a very long time in combat. This is the time it takes for a system that has never encountered a particular input to process that input and decide where to file it. Then the support wings begin to move. Then the lead element fires again, not one shot this time. 3. All 3 hit. The first takes out our forward sensor array. Wallace goes silent, permanently. The second clips the dorsal hull and peels back 14 meters of outer plating like the lid of a ration tin. The third hits the midsection, and Pravar says something in the Rathai that I do not know and I do not ask about. The unbroken shudders through all of it. Old hull plates flexing, old welds absorbing the shock the way old things absorb shocks. Not easily, not without protest, but with the specific stubbornness of things that have been through enough to know that shuddering is not the same as breaking. We do not turn. We do not deviate. Hal's hands on the navigation controls are perfectly steady. He is 26 years old and he is flying us directly into the middle of 61 ships, and he is doing it with the focus of someone who grew up watching water and learned that you cannot argue with the direction something is going. You can only decide whether you are going to be in the water or on top of it. Range to lead element, I say. 40,000 kilometers, the tactical officer calls out. Her name is Nina Castillo, 31 years old, 2 prior deployments, the kind of voice in a crisis that sounds like she is reading a weather report. Closing at current speed. Tave, I say, on my mark. Ready, Tave says. The hegemony fires again. 2 shots this time. One misses, their fire control is adjusting for our approach speed, and the adjustment is slightly off. which means that whoever designed their targeting system never modeled for a ship that was accelerating toward the fire instead of away from it. The second hit takes out the port maneuvering thruster. Pravar makes that sound again, not a word yet, working toward 22,000 kilometers, Nina says. I feel the unbroken beneath me, the shudder that is not breaking, the old bones holding. Tave, I say, mark. The rail batteries fire. At this range, there is no margin for the elegant kind of targeting. At this range, targeting is geometry and nerve. Tave runs both batteries 1 and 3, battery 2 held in reserve on my standing order, with the precision of a man who has alphabetized every crisis he has ever been through and knows exactly where each one is filed. The shots land. The lead cruiser's forward shielding collapses. Not destroyed, not dead, but staggered visibly, measurably staggered, and the display shows it as the cruiser's formation position drifts 200 meters off its designated axis before its thrusters compensate. On the bridge, nobody says anything. They are all looking at the display. The lead cruiser of a hegemony fleet, in 14 engagements across 14 worlds, has never drifted off its axis before. The hegemony support wings stop moving. And then Nina says it, and her weather report voice breaks on the last word in a very specific way. The way voices break when they are reporting something they did not think they were ever going to report. Commander, she says, they've opened a channel. Pravar's head comes up. His secondary eyes fully pressurize, that deep gathering expression that means he is processing something without a category for it. The hegemony, he says slowly, has never opened a communications channel in any engagement. I know, I say. Not once, he says. Not in the Myrth engagement, not at Pel 7, not at. I know, Pravar. He is quiet. I look at the open channel indicator on the display. I look at the lead cruiser, drifted 200 meters off its axis, its forward shielding collapsed and rebuilding. I look at 61 ships that are, for the first time in this entire campaign, completely still. I do not key the channel. I do not say anything into it. Let it stay open, I say. Let them listen. Listen to what? Pravar says. I do not answer him. The answer is already happening. The answer is the sound of the unbroken working, the deck plates under our feet, the power system cycling, Suhan's crew moving through the lower levels keeping the ship alive, Tave's guns recharging in their steady mechanical rhythm, Howe's hands on the navigation console holding our course. The answer is a ship that should have turned around, that is not turned around. I pick up a coolant rag from the damaged kit at the base of the command console and press it to the side of my face, where a fragment from the third impact has been bleeding for the past 4 minutes. I had not noticed. Pravar points at it, and I acknowledge it and press the rag to it and do not stop watching the display. The hegemony lead cruiser finishes compensating. It settles back onto its axis. And then it moves. Back. 40,000 kilometers, in the exact reverse of its previous approach vector. Clean, deliberate, unhurried. Not a retreat. A look. The look of something that has encountered an input it does not have a category for, and has decided, for the first time in 61 engagements, that it needs more time before it files the answer. Pravar is gripping his console with all 4 hands. They moved back, he says. Yes. They have never. I know, Pravar. He is quiet for a long time after that. The channel stays open. The unbroken breathes damaged, listing slightly from the maneuvering thruster loss, 14 meters of outer plating peeled back on the dorsal hull, but breathing, working, staying in place between the hegemony fleet and the planet behind us whose catalog number I have never bothered to learn. In the gunnery bay, I hear, very faintly, the sound of Tave reorganizing something. I leave the channel open. I press the rag to my face. We hold. The damage reports come in the way rain comes in when the wind is against you, not all at once, but relentlessly, each one arriving before you have finished processing the last. Level 4 is compromised through 3 sections. The forward sensor array is gone, Wallace is gone, and I note this without ceremony because there is no time for ceremony, and I make a note to give him one later. The port maneuvering thruster is out entirely, which means our turning radius has roughly doubled, which Howe is already accounting for in his course corrections with the particular focus of someone who has decided that the new parameters are simply the parameters, and the job is still the job. The shielding. Sue Han gives me the number in the same tone she would use to tell me the temperature of the engine bay coolant. Professional. Level. With the very faint additional note of someone who has been in difficult rooms before and knows that the tone of the delivery matters more than the content. Forward shielding, she says, is at 31% and not climbing. How long does it hold at 31? I ask. At current engagement tempo, maybe 4 exchanges, maybe 3, she pauses, definitely not 5. And if they escalate? She does not answer immediately. In the silence, I can hear her crew in the background, someone calling a number, someone else confirming it, the specific organized noise of people doing the maximum possible with what they have. Then we use battery 2, she says. I said hold battery 2 in reserve. I know what you said. She says it without challenge, just fact. I'm telling you what the reserve is for, so we're in agreement about the moment. I think about it. Agreed, I say. The channel closes. On the tactical display, the hegemony fleet is doing something that Nina has been narrating for the past 6 minutes in her weather report voice. And the thing it is doing does not have a name in Standard Alliance tactical doctrine, because Standard Alliance tactical doctrine did not anticipate it. They are not advancing. They are not retreating. They are redistributing, the support wings folding inward, the lead element holding at its new position 40,000 kilometers back, the whole formation contracting and relayering in a configuration that looks, from the outside, like something reconsidering its assumptions. Pravar, I say, what does that formation tell you? He studies the display for a moment. His hands are still on the console edge, no longer gripping it. His secondary eyes have gone from full pressurization to something more like watchfulness. It is a re-evaluation posture, he says. In the Rathai doctrine, the closest equivalent would be, it is what a commander does when the engagement has produced data that does not match the predictive model. He pauses. They are revising. Revising what? Us, he says. The communications channel, still open, still silent, produces a sound. Not a word. Not a signal pattern I recognize. Something between a frequency and a tone, sustained for 2 seconds and then cut. Nina looks at me. Pravar looks at me. Battle stations, I say, because the sound could be anything, and until I know what it is, the answer to anything is to be ready for everything. 2 more shots from the lead element. Both land. One takes out our secondary comms relay, and one, the one that matters, takes out a 10-meter section of mid-hull plating and blows the seal on an interior compartment on level 2. Deck 2, compartment 7. Suhan's crew quarters. I hear it through the ship the way you hear something through a wall, muffled, shaped wrong, but unmistakable. The sound of a sealed space meeting open vacuum is not a sound I will describe here, because some sounds do not improve from description. Garrett gets the emergency seal down in 40 seconds. 40 seconds is excellent time. 40 seconds is fast enough that the compartment's automatic life support backup has not yet run its emergency cycle. 40 seconds is still 40 seconds. I keep my hands flat on the command console. Casualties level 2, I say. Nina checks. She takes slightly longer than usual. She comes back with a number that I put in the part of my mind that I will open later, when there is a later to open it in. Tave, I say. Ready, Tave says. His voice has the specific quality of someone who is running their grief through a very controlled mechanism, and the mechanism is working, and he intends to keep it working. Battery 2, I say. Authorization draw 7. A pause, the sound of the charge building. Authorized, Tave says. I watch the tactical display. The lead element has advanced again, not all the way, not back to its previous position, but closing, testing, checking if the damage it has done has changed our answer. How, I say. Same bearing as before, hold it. Holding, How says. I watch the distance close on the display. 38,000 kilometers, 35. Tave, I say. Battery 2 fires. The shot is not the clean, precise work of 1 and 3. It has the slightly soft edge of a system at 61%, the trajectory carrying a small drift that Tave accounts for with a correction that lands the shot inside its target window by a margin that is, professionally speaking, extraordinary. The lead element's starboard drive cluster goes dark. Not destroyed, damaged, but damaged in the specific way that means the ship is no longer maneuvering at full capacity, which means that its position in the formation is no longer guaranteed, which means that every other ship in that formation has to account for a variable that has never existed before. The hegemony fleet goes still. Completely still. For 11 seconds nothing moves, no shots, no formation adjustment, 60 ships and 1 damaged lead cruiser absolutely motionless in space. 11 seconds is a very long time. I know what it is. I have seen it once before, on a merchant vessel in a storm off the Oregon coast, when the storm produced a wave configuration that the captain's 30 years of experience had no category for. The stillness before the response is not hesitation. It is the gap between an assumption being broken and a new one being built. The hegemony has been operating on an assumption for 61 engagements. The assumption is that there is a point at which every opponent stops. They are revising the assumption. Through the open channel, still open, still carrying nothing but the sound of the unbroken working, I hear the tone again. 2 seconds, cut. And then, for the first time in 61 engagements, across 14 worlds, a voice comes through the channel. Not words, initially. Not a language I recognize. A sequence of sounds that my translation software processes for 3 seconds before it finds a match in the Wrath linguistic database, because the Wrath have been fighting the hegemony longer than we have, and they cataloged the language even though the hegemony never used it in combat. The translation appears on my display. Pravar reads it at the same moment I do. I hear his breath change. The translation is 3 words. What are you? Not an identification request. Not a tactical communication. The syntax, Pravar tells me in a slightly stunned voice, is the interrogative form used for categorization. The same form a hegemony cataloger would use before filing something into the correct position in their understanding of the universe. They are trying to file us. They do not have a file for us. I look at the display. I look at 60 ships that have crossed 14 worlds without asking that question of anyone. I look at the open channel indicator. I look at the notebook in my breast pocket and feel its edge through the fabric. I think about 14 entries on the left side of the page. I reach down and key the channel. I say we're what's left. I close the channel. The hegemony fleet does not fire. The unbroken burns in the dark, listing 4 degrees from the maneuvering thruster loss, 31% forward shielding, battery 2 at 22% charge. Every system that Suhan's crew has not actively held together, showing the accumulated cost of the last 2 hours in amber and red indicators across my display. Between us and the planet behind us, there is nothing. Just the unbroken, still there. Still there. The 11th minute of silence is the one that matters. The first 10 minutes I was counting. Counting is what I do when I am waiting for the thing that is coming. I count seconds. I count indicators on the damage display. I count the footsteps in the corridor outside the bridge where Garrett is running a repair cable through from the secondary power conduit. Counting is a way of measuring the shape of the silence, giving it dimensions, making it into something that can be handled. At 11 minutes, the long-range display updates. The hegemony fleet is moving. Not toward us. I watch the vector calculation run. I watch it a second time to be certain. I watch it a third time because some numbers need to be confirmed 3 times before you trust what they are telling you. Away. The hegemony fleet is withdrawing. Not a tactical repositioning. Not a re-evaluation pause. The vectors are clean and consistent and they point in one direction, which is the direction they came from, at a speed that is, Nina checks twice, slightly higher than their standard advanced speed. Not rushing. They are never rushing. But faster than before. The bridge is very quiet. Hal has his hand still on the navigation controls even though there is nothing to navigate right now. Nina is reading the display with her whole body tilted forward, as if proximity to the data changes what it says. In the tactical station, Tave is completely motionless, and I cannot see his face from where I sit, but I can see the set of his shoulders, which is the set of shoulders that belongs to a person who is very carefully not allowing himself to understand what is happening yet. Because understanding it means letting go of the mechanism that has been holding everything in place for the past 2 hours. Pravar makes a sound. This time it has a word in it, a the Rathai word. I do not know the translation, but it is the kind of word where the meaning comes through the sound even across the language gap, something like relief, something like disbelief, something that has weight in it the way only things that were not expected have weight. They are withdrawing, he says, in standard, as if he needs to hear it in a language he is certain of. Yes, I say. They have never. I know, Pravar. He is quiet for a moment. Then, the council will want a full report. The council will get one. They will want to know what you did, tactically, what the decision calculus was. I look at the display. The hegemony fleet vectors, steady and clear, moving away from the planet whose catalog number I have not looked up. Tell them I applied appropriate pressure, I say. He makes a sound that, in the Rathai, is the equivalent of a very dry laugh. I have only heard it a handful of times. It means something like, that is technically accurate in a way that should embarrass everyone who hears it. I press the coolant rag to my cheek. The bleeding has mostly stopped. The fragment is still there. Garrett will pull it out later with the medical kit he carries in his left cargo pocket, because the Unbroken has a medical bay on level 3. But Garrett has always thought that waiting until level 3 was an inefficient use of transit time. Suhan, I say into the comms. The channel opens. In the background I hear the sound of her crew, quieter now, the specific frequency of work that has shifted from emergency to sustained, still hard, still relentless, but a different kind of relentless. The kind that builds rather than prevents. They're leaving, I say. A pause. The minor key humming begins, and then stops after 2 notes and begins again. How many did we lose? She asks. I tell her. The humming stops again, for longer this time. Long enough that I can hear her breathe through the channel. Okay, she says. Her voice is the same level as always. The same professional weather report calm. But the word has more space around it than words usually get, more space than you would normally leave for a single syllable, and the space is doing the work that she is not going to ask the word to do. Okay, she says again, and I let her say it twice, because some things need to be said more than once before they become real. Battery 2, I say, Can we get it back to operational? 20%, maybe 25%. Enough to operate, not enough to fight anything that fights back. That is fine. We are not fighting anything right now. Commander, she pauses, are we going home? I look at the display. The hegemony vectors, the planet behind us, the Alliance relief fleet that is now, according to a communication Nina just pulled from the long-range relay, 40 minutes out from our position. 47 ships. They have been burning toward us since Nina broadcast the engagement data 17 minutes ago, burning hard. The kind of burning that happens when fleet commanders see a single ship's damage report and do the math on what that damage means. The Alliance fleet commander is an admiral named Saren of Vale Prime. I know this name from the briefings. His planet was the third on the left side of my notebook. Not yet, I say. Maintain position. Suhan hums 2 more notes, then holding. The hegemony fleet continues its withdrawal on the display, steady and consistent, the vectors unchanging. Pravar is watching it with the particular attention of someone who has shifted from fear to analysis, who is now performing the function they were trained to perform, which is to take what has happened and make it legible. The formation they are withdrawing in, he says. It is not a standard withdrawal configuration. What is it? It is, he pauses, searching. In the Rathai doctrine, the closest equivalent is a recall for revision order. It is used when a fleet has encountered conditions that require command-level reassessment before re-engagement. He looks at me. They are not retreating. They are going back to report. Report what? That their cataloging is incomplete, he says. That they encountered a category they do not have. He pauses. Us. I think about that. I think about the hegemony, which has crossed 14 worlds and cataloged every species it encountered with complete confidence, filing each one under conquer and move on. I think about the question they sent through the channel, 3 words, no precedent in 61 engagements, and the answer I gave them, which was 3 words back. We're what's left. What I meant under the words was more than 3 words can hold. What I meant was, we know what losing looks like because we have watched it happen 14 times and we have kept the count, and we have not stopped counting, and the thing about humans who have kept the count and not stopped counting is that they do not know how to stop. The mechanism does not have that setting. We are built, in whatever way things are built, for the accumulation of all the weight that the count represents, and we carry it, and we walk forward into the thing that created the weight. That is not heroism. I want to be clear about that. That is not courage in any clean sense. That is simply what the mechanism does. You can call it stubbornness. You can call it a cognitive failure. You can call it the specific human inability to file something underfinished when the ledger says otherwise. The hegemony went away to find a category for it. I am not sure they will find one. 47 Alliance ships drop out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of my long-range display, and the comm system opens immediately with a voice that is the Rathai, but speaks standard with the precise accent of someone trained in formal diplomatic settings. This is Admiral Saren commanding the Alliance relief fleet. I am reading the Unbroken's position. I am also reading the damage profile. A pause. Commander Dross, do you require medical evacuation? I look around the bridge. Hao's hands on the console. Nina, still tilted toward the display. Tave, motionless with the slightly alphabetical quality of his silence. Pravar watching me. No, I say into the comm. Do you need me to move? A longer pause. No, Saren says, we do not. Then I'll stay put, I say. The Unbroken does not move. Saren's fleet fans out into a coverage pattern around us. Not surrounding us. Not defensive exactly. More like a structure that has been built around something it wants to keep standing. Support ships begin moving toward us almost immediately with repair crews and medical teams, and Nina manages the docking coordinates with her usual focus, and Garrett goes to meet the first medical shuttle because he has already pulled the fragment from my cheek and done an efficient job of it. Pravar stands at the edge of the viewport for a long time, watching the hegemony vectors fade from the display as the fleet moves beyond our long-range sensor range. They will come back, he says, when they have revised. Probably, I say. And when they do, I take the notebook from my pocket. I open it to the left side. 14 entries, planetary names and dates, the running count I have been keeping since Vorath Station. I turn to the right side of the notebook, the names. I add 3 more. Then I close the notebook and put it back in my pocket. When they come back, I say, we will still be here. Pravar does not say anything. Through the viewport, the system star is rising over the curve of the planet behind us. The one with the catalog number I have not looked up, the one that is the 15th world on the hegemony's advance route, the one that is still there. Still there. I stay at the viewport for a long time after the bridge crew has gone to their next task. I stay there long enough that the star clears the planet's horizon fully, and the light catches the hull of the Unbroken from outside. I can see it reflected in the viewport glass, the old scarred hull, the peeled plating on the dorsal section, the dark gap where the forward sensors used to be. She looks, in the reflection, like exactly what she is, something that took everything given to it and did not stop. I think about the planet. I think about the name I could look up and have chosen not to. I think about how a name you look up is different from a name you give, because a name you give means you were there, means you made a decision about what a thing is called and therefore what it is. I make up a name. I do not say it out loud. I put it in the part of my mind where I keep the things that are mine, the notebook, the count. The name's on the right side of the page. When Saren's formal communication arrives 2 hours later, it calls the engagement the Stand of the Unbroken, in 11 Alliance languages, in the kind of careful official phrasing that makes what happened sound like a decision, rather than a running tally that refused to come out even. His personal message is shorter. It says that the Rathai Council is preparing a formal commendation for you and your crew. They are calling it the highest honor they have. They want to know if you have a preference for the ceremony. I write back, skip the ceremony, send the repair materials. He writes back, both. I do not argue. There is paperwork to file. There is a great deal of it, damage reports, casualty notifications, weapons expenditure logs, a formal after-action report for Alliance Command that will require at least 60 pages and will be read by people who were not there, and will understand about 40% of what actually happened. I start with the damage reports because they are the most concrete, and because concreteness is where I live. The Unbroken sits in the light of a star, whose planet I have named in a way nobody else will ever know. In the gunnery bay, faintly audible through 2 decks and the general noise of repair teams moving through the ship, Tave is organizing something. In the engineering bay, Suhan is humming. In the navigation console, Hao is running the math on our return trajectory with the same calm focus he uses for everything, and occasionally he looks up at the display to check that the hegemony vectors are still pointing away. They are. For now, they are. I add a 15th line to the left side of the notebook. Then I look at it for a long time. Then I turn to the right side, where the names are, and I leave the next space blank. Not because there is nothing to put there. Because the count is not closed yet. It is never closed yet. That is the thing the hegemony went home to find a category for, and that is the thing they will not find a category for, not in any catalog they have, not in any filing system built on the assumption that everything eventually stops. We do not stop. Not because we are brave, not because we are strong, not because of any quality that deserves a ceremony or a commendation in 11 Alliance languages. Because the ledger is open. And we keep terrible records.